What is up, everyone? You have made it this far with us, the MMA Island team. We got Chris, we got Zach, we got the fight picks, and we got the main event of the evening. And when Bruce Buffer will say it, it'll almost never be truer. This is the moment that we have all been waiting for. The middleweight championship of the world between current king Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. My, oh my, what a fight this is. So let me just go on. I'll start for this one, and let me just talk about how I see this fight going. So first of all, Israel Adesanya coming off a snoozer of his last fight that I don't care what you say, it was not his fault. It was the blame always will lie on Romero, in my opinion, for that. But it's almost like for me that fight never happened. Honestly, it just kind of feels like that, you know? It doesn't really make any difference for this fight, and we have the absolute wrecking ball that is Paulo Costa, who has looked like an unstoppable machine ever since, like, losing on Tough. And again, the guys at Heavy Hands put it best. Paulo Costa just decided to get good. And is he good now? Oh, absolutely, he is good now. He's in the UFC so far. Yes, he had a weak first three opponents and probably the most the worst booking the UFC has ever done. Paulo Costa fighting Johnny Hendricks. Who did that to Johnny Hendricks? Why would anyone do that to Johnny Hendricks? That's just not okay. And then he goes on and he fights Uriah Hall, and then he fights Yoel Romero. Now, the Uriah Hall fight is the one that I want to talk about, because Uriah Hall is the fighter in the division who most replicates Israel Adesanya. And something that I noticed about Paulo Costa is obviously we know that he wants his opponents with their backs on the cage. All of Costa's highlights are him just hammering away at an opponent whose back is on the cage. That is his bread and butter. But every time he would go in, he would get caught, and he even got dropped by Uriah Hall. And this is because of the defensive issues that Paulo Costa has. He has always had this fatal flaw of his, and that is his inability to defend a strike. Luckily, he is a gargantuan human, and he has an ungodly chin and can take insane amount of punishment. Uriah Hall hit him with a lot of shots, and he was able to stay up and keep moving. And against Yoel Romero, he did the same thing. He just pushed him up to the cage and bullied him there. You see, there's this narrative going around that Paulo Costa is this one-shot knockout power puncher. No, he's not. He is not a one-shot knockout power. Paulo Costa is actually a volume striker. If you look at his volume, you look at that 8.43 significant strikes per minute with a 5-fight sample size. And at that point, you have to start to take it seriously. You'll never see Paulo Costa's highlights him one-punching someone. No, it's him melting people. That's what he does. He gets them and he melts them down. But if there's any one fighter that you cannot have defensive errors against, it's Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya is the most accurate counterpuncher the sport has ever seen. And we saw that. Whitaker, in his fights, he was blitzing. That's what he does, right? But Adesanya downloaded that data so fast, he had those blitzes locked down to an absolute T. He knew where Whitaker's head was. That's why he knocked him down the last two times Whitaker tried to blitz, because he knew his head would be there. Although the one thing, and we know how Adesanya defense strikes, he likes to lean back, keep those hands up, and move his arm around for a hook, for a counter strike. And those strikes are what I believe are going to hurt Paulo Costa. But something we also have seen is that Adesanya is slightly weak when his back is up against the cage. And no one did that better than Kelvin Gastelum. Every time that Adesanya was hurt against Gastelum, where was Adesanya? His back was against the cage. So this fight is really interesting because both of their fatal flaws play into each other's strengths. And that's what makes this fight so interesting. So whose flaws are more pronounced is really the secret to who I think will win. And I think that Costa's flaws are more pronounced. Yes, Costa can melt Adesanya. I think he can. But Adesanya's kickboxing and striking pedigree is just one of the best we've ever seen. And I think that his punches are so accurate. Watching him strike is just a joy. And Costa, it's not like he can be hurt. He likes to take a lot of shots in order to get the fight to where he wants to be. And against Adesanya, you cannot do that. I think this fight's going to get finished either way. I think that's what's going to happen. I think someone's going down, and I think it's going to be our American patriot hero, defender of America, soldier of freedom, Paulo Costa. Sadly, I have to pick Israel Adesanya to get the win. And I think he's going to finish him in the third.
Yeah, honestly, rest in peace to the KOB. Rest in peace, Paulo. I feel like Izzy's definitely going to enter the matrix in this one. I feel like cardio is definitely going to be a big factor in this fight. I don't think we've seen Costa in a 5-round setting before because his fight against Yoel Romero was 3 rounds. So
Yeah.
I really do feel like Izzy's going to bring him into deep waters going into the 4th and 5th rounds if it makes it that far, which obviously, Paulo's gas tank isn't quite the best, and we haven't seen it tested in a championship level setting before. So I feel like that's a big factor. I was also watching the Uriah Hall fights last night. I have to say I was incredibly impressed with Uriah Hall's performance in that fight, regardless of him being knocked out by Costa. His jab was so perfect in that fight, and Costa didn't have a answer for the jab. He couldn't do anything. He was getting pushed back. Obviously, he was coming forward like a zombie. Let's call him the Brazilian zombie, honestly. But he kept on coming forward, but he was phased by Uriah Hall's shots. And, Uriah Hall hasn't, I don't think he's knocked out anybody recently. I think one of his last knockouts was against Krzysztof Jotko. But, Izzy packs a punch. He definitely has a lot more power, definitely has a lot more tools than what Uriah Hall has. And that's as close stylistically. Uriah Hall is by the closest style, like his in the or at middleweight right now. So it's just kind of hard to say because Uriah Hall was doing pretty good in that fight until the knockouts. And Izzy's just a way better Uriah Hall in my opinion. And Izzy's movements, Izzy's footwork, Izzy's style to evade punches and kicks too, because he always he dodges kicks perfectly. We've seen that against Vittori. We've seen that against Whitaker. This guy enters the matrix. He's Neo, and it's like Neo versus I don't want to say the Hulk because but Neo versus a lot slower guy. Like it's a tank versus a sniper, and the tank could. We've seen Izzy knocked down kickboxing by Pereira, and his chin had some trouble against Kelvin Gastelum. But if Costa can't find that punch, if he can't find that one shot, or if he can't land the series of punches, and if Izzy is able to control the distance between him and Costa, I feel like Izzy is definitely a no-brainer for this fight. Obviously, it could go either way, but I'm betting the house on Izzy on this one.
Interesting. We seem to have the house bet on Israel Adesanya. And that will conclude our fight picks for UFC 253. We thank you for joining us here and watching all of these videos. If you watch all these videos, you have a special place in our hearts. Let us know in the comments who is going to win this fight. Are you going to go with the patriot hero, the savior of America, Paulo Costa, or are you going to go
KOB.
with the king of bitches? No E. Or are you going to go with the last style bender and the current king, Israel Adesanya? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for checking these out. We'll see you next week. Peace.